Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia, has been placed under investigation. Chris Sun says authorities received more reports of suspected child abuse cases after new regulation took effect. And new U.S. national defense strategy says Western Hemisphere is Washington's priority, not China. Good evening. Welcome to TVB News. The Defense Ministry in Beijing announced that senior military officials Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli have been placed under investigation for suspected serious discipline and law violations. Zhang is the first-ranked vice chairman of the Central Military Commission. 75-year-old General of the Army Zhang Youxia is a member of the 24-man CPC Political Bureau. Zhang serves as the first-ranked vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, China's top military command body, which marks him the highest-ranking uniformed officer in the Chinese military. Liu Zhenli, 61, is a member of the Central Military Commission and chief of staff of the CMC Joint Staff Department. In 2021, he was promoted to the rank of general at the age of 57, the youngest in public records. The ministry said the decision to probe into the two top generals was made by the Communist Party of China's Central Committee. Analysts say the ousting of the two generals is designed to reform the military and part of a broader anti-graft purge that has seen many officials punished over the years. Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun said authorities have received an increase in the number of suspected child abuse cases. Sun's comments came after the mandatory reporting of child abuse ordinance took effect on Tuesday. Mimeo Sungai reports.
The new ordinance applies to 25 categories of professionals in the social welfare, education and healthcare sectors, requiring them to report suspected serious child abuse cases that come to their notice in the course of their work. These include childcare workers, social workers, teaching staff, pharmacists, nurses, and medical practitioners. Those who violate the ordinance or obstruct a specified professional from reporting a suspected case can receive a sentence of up to 3 months in jail and a fine of $50,000. On Saturday, Secretary for Labor and Welfare Chris Sun said the government received more reports related to suspected child abuse since the ordinance took effect. Sun says such a situation was within expectations, but he could not provide an exact figure on the cases they had received at this stage. Memos 9, TVB News.
Documents submitted to the Legislative Council by the Civil Service Bureau indicated that from September 2023 to mid-January this year, 23 civil servants triggered the mandatory retirement mechanism due to persistently poor work performance. 4 civil servants were ordered to retire, 2 resigned after receiving notices, and 4 saw their performance improve to an acceptable level, thus allowing for a suspension of the mechanism, though they remain under a 3-year monitoring period. The cases of another 13 individuals are still ongoing. Since 2023, the government has simplified the mandatory retirement mechanism for civil servants with persistently poor work performance. Lawmaker Judy Chan has apologized for a traffic incident in Wan Chai in which she drove against traffic. Her actions were captured on video, sparking public scrutiny. The New People's Party legislator said she would assist police with the investigation by providing any required information. Mimeo Sungai reports.
This video shows a brief moment when a black vehicle drove against traffic on Jetfair Road in Wan Chai on Friday morning. Opposite the car were 5 engines. According to car plate records, the private vehicle is owned by lawmaker Judy Chan. Chan later apologized to the public for her mistake on social media, saying it was an incorrect judgment, and promised that she would follow the rules rigorously in the future. Speaking after a radio program on Saturday, the legislator said sorry again.
I would like to take this chance to make my apology. I want to say that I'm sorry to the general public, and I'm actually on my way to the police and will provide as much as information I need to for the investigation.
Chan left by taking the car of DAB legislator Chan Hock-fong. Police said they are aware of the incident and authorities are following up on the matter. Sources say the police would often contact the driver first when an incident of this nature happens and wait for the person to submit information. At around 5 p.m., Chan arrived at the traffic police station in Saiwan Hall to give a statement. Chan said she could not comment further at this stage. Members 9, TVB News.
Professor David Hui of the Chinese University said the influenza surveillance data was on the rise over the past week and warned the beginning of the winter flu peak season. Hui said the positivity rate of respiratory specimens rose from 3.9% 2 weeks ago to 4.6% last week. The number of infection cases in schools and care homes also surged twofold from 14 2 weeks ago to 46 last week. He said the winter flu season could peak soon. Police on Saturday charged a 73-year-old woman with 1 count of murder. She was arrested on suspicion of being linked to a murder and attempted suicide case in Qinzhaocui on Thursday after a 77-year-old husband died on the same day. The elderly couple were found lying unconscious in bed in Qinzhaocui on Thursday. The man suffered injuries to his neck and hands and was pronounced dead at the hospital. His wife is still in critical condition. Initial investigations show the couple had allegedly attempted to commit suicide by taking pills in their room before the wife allegedly killed the man. The case will be mentioned at Kowloon City Magistrates Courts on Monday. The Pentagon on Friday released an unclassified version of its 2026 National Defense Strategy, or NDS, placing defense of the U.S. homeland and its interests across the Western Hemisphere above all other military priorities, including China. The strategy signals a shift in U.S. military commitments overseas, saying it will offer more limited support to allies and urging them to assume greater responsibility for regional security, including its support for Ukraine. The NDS said it is Europe's responsibility first and foremost to end the 4-year-old Russia-Ukraine conflict. The NDS is issued once per administration and sets military priorities for a president's term. The White House is reportedly weighing a total blockade of oil imports into Cuba to drive regime change. Government officials have divided opinions on the plan. Some in the Trump administration were worried that a total blockade in the Caribbean country could trigger a humanitarian crisis. In the wake of an overnight U.S. raid on Caracas, which resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, Politico reported on Friday that Washington is considering a possible total oil blockade against Cuba. People familiar with the matter said it is backed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, whose parents were immigrants from Cuba. Some in the Trump administration argue that energy is the chokehold to kill the regime, claiming the Cuban government must be overthrown by year-end. No final decision has been made so far on whether to approve the move, because the possibility of a humanitarian crisis has led many officials to push back against it. The Cuban economy is already throttled by the loss of Venezuelan oil shipments and the resale of some of those cargoes that Havana used to obtain foreign currency. U.S. President Donald Trump earlier declared that no oil shipments and money would go to Cuba. In response, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said his country does not attack or threaten, but it is ready to defend the homeland to the last drop of blood. And still ahead? British Prime Minister criticised Donald Trump over his claim NATO countries stayed away from front lines during the war in Afghanistan. Thousands in Minneapolis braved freezing weather to protest against Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Welcome back. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has urged US President Donald Trump to apologize for his false assertion that troops from NATO countries other than Americans stayed away from the front line during the war in Afghanistan. Trump said that he wasn't sure NATO would be there to support the US if and when requested, provoking outrage and distress among many in the UK, a country that is part of NATO. Tracy Furness reports.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer did not mince his words in responding to Trump's comments about being unsure if NATO would show up for the United States if and when requested.
Let me start by paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling. And I'm not surprised they've caused such hurt to the loved ones of those who were killed or injured, and in fact, across the country.
Starmer said nearly 150,000 British troops served in Afghanistan in the years after the US-led 2001 invasion, the largest contingent after the American one. Prince Harry weighed in on the furore too, saying the sacrifices of British soldiers during the war deserve to be spoken about truthfully and with respect. Thousands of lives were changed forever, Harry said, who undertook 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan in the British Army and who lost friends there. Reports said Prince Harry issued a statement saying, in 2001, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first and only time in history. It meant that every allied nation was obliged to stand with the United States in Afghanistan in pursuit of our shared security. Allies answered that call.
In the U.S., thousands of demonstrators went out into the streets of Etobicoke, Minneapolis, in the state of Minnesota, to demand an end to President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown in the city. Nasbi Kareem with more.
Freezing in Minneapolis, with the mercury down to minus 24 degrees Celsius at its lowest. But it is not the weather ice that people are worried about.
Honestly, I don't love the cold. It's definitely chilly, but the kind of ice that is a danger to us is not the weather.
Thousands braved the bitter cold to protest in Minneapolis against the actions of ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, whose agents have riled up the local population by their methods during a campaign to round up illegal immigrants. These include the fatal shooting of Renee Good in her car on January 7th and the arrest of a 5-year-old boy along with his father. Local police also arrested dozens of clergy members who sang hymns and prayed at the Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, calling for U.S. President Donald Trump to withdraw the 3,000 federal law enforcement officers sent to the area. Authorities say they are determined to complete the job in Minneapolis.
So operations continue unabated here in Minneapolis. Several illegal alien criminals taken off the streets yet again over the past 24 hours. Again, that is what we're here to do, and we're not going to be deterred in doing that. We are going to take these criminal illegal aliens off the street and make America a safer place, make Minneapolis a safer place. Again, that is why we're here. Now, the 5-year-old yesterday, some of you had questions on the 5-year-old yesterday. That 5-year-old remains with his family. We say that again, remains with his family. We know that. That false media narrative that was pushed out yesterday was, well, it was false.
A vast network of labor unions, progressive organizations and clergy has been urging people in Minnesota to stay away from work, school and stores to protest against immigration enforcement in the state. Around 700 businesses in Minneapolis reportedly shut down for the day in solidarity with the protesters.
What's happening is not the vision for America. It's not my vision for America. There needs to be more empathy. And what's happening to people here in Minneapolis and other parts of the country, it's too much. It's not right. There needs to be due process.
Nasri Kareem, TVB News.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said she had asked US President Donald Trump to amend the terms of his Board of Peace in order to resolve constitutional issues that have prevented Italy from joining it. Meanwhile, displaced people in Gaza continue to queue up in their thousands to receive food inside the Strip. Nasbi Kareem again.
The border crossings are meant to be open as part of the post-war peace deal, but people still crowd distribution centers to receive food. This man from Beit Hanun says this rice may be nothing for many people, but for him and his family, it is everything. This is Happiness Kitchen in the Mouassi camp. Its owner, Saad Abdin, said the border crossings are only open in media narratives, but the reality is different. US President Donald Trump may be hoping to change all this with his Board of Peace, which will oversee Gaza's development after 2 years of brutal war. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni says her country's position is one of willingness and interest in being involved, but certain terms need amending to comply with Italy's constitution. Speaking after a meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Rome, she said other European countries should also be part of the initiative. The US has also asked Italy to join the International Stabilization Force for Gaza as a founding member, according to a Bloomberg News report. This force is meant to keep the peace in Gaza. Meanwhile, an invitation for Canada to join the board has been rescinded because of a spat between Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney. However, Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand said the country will continue its objective for peace in Gaza, regardless of exclusion from the US program. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.